the most iconic watch ever.
The Rolex Submariner.
A Rolex Submariner.
I love a wee Submariner, right?
You either love it or hate it. So there's definitely something I hate about that watch, and it is most definitely price tag. And I hadn't realized that I have been avoiding black divers like the plague. So I decided it was time for some change, especially with tons of people touting it as the best one and done watch. So I decided to build an affordable $400 Rolex Submariner homage that is better than a Rolex. For me, sort of. So I opted for an NH36 because if I wanted to change the dial to one that utilized the day function, I would be able to do so. And here I'm taking off the dial feet and I'm making sure to file it down and also use the blower to make sure that there's no debris left, because you don't want to get any of that dial debris in your movement. This glossy black dial is the only component I bought off AliExpress. Here I'm carefully switching the date so that when I apply the hands, they'll be aligned at 12. I went for some Mercedes hands and they look really good in my opinion. So I'm using Serratico to apply the hands. If you're using the Namoki Mods kit, make sure to use the black pusher for the hour hand, the white pusher for the minutes hand, and the red pusher for the seconds hand. So here I'm just checking for alignment and making sure that the hands aren't interfering with each other. And voila, the hands work as they're supposed to. This is the Submariner style case with drilled lugs. And this is the lume chapter ring, something that the Rolex Submariner does not have. Here I'm applying the double dome sapphire crystal with red AR. I'm just using a crystal press that I got off Amazon for around $15, and I'm rotating the watch to make sure that the crystal is aligned on all sides. And here I'm just putting the case on the watch movement. Looks great. I already applied the bezel, so now I'm applying the bezel insert. I actually did this incorrectly. The adhesive is very uneven, so make sure to do this very carefully. This is what the bezel sounds like. This comes in at 40 millimeters in diameter with a lug-to-lug of 47 millimeters and a thickness of almost 15 millimeters with a crown diameter of 6 millimeters, and the bracelet tapers from 22 millimeters to 18. Namoki did send over the parts to build this watch, but as always, they have no input whatsoever on the content of this video, so my thoughts are completely my own. So as I mentioned before, this build was far from perfect. So aside from the fact that the seconds hand kept catching on the minutes hand, which meant that I had to take it all off and reinstall the hands, and aside from the fact that I didn't apply the bezel adhesive to the bezel insert correctly, to the point that now when you turn the watch off axis, you can kind of see where the bezel adhesive was misplaced, but the bezel clicks have actually given me more problems because this bezel is 120 clicks. But the thing is that every time you turn it, there is a distinct click followed by a faint click that is supposed to be the 60 plus the other 60, which is 120. But the problem though is the faint clicks are very faint to the point that you can't even hear them or feel them. So if you're turning the bezel in a normal way, it feels like it's 60 clicks. So you only feel the 120 if you're turning it really, really slowly and you're paying very close attention, but most people don't do that. So I think these bezel issues are probably just due to the fact that I installed the bezel incorrectly the first time around, or due to the fact that I might have gotten a faulty bezel because I haven't searched up any complaints about Namoki's bezels, aside from the fact that they are quite tight when you first install them, but don't be too worried if the bezel is too tight when it's first installed, because after some uses, it'll get looser. So it's really easy to discount this watch as a clomage that's just trying to be the Rolex Submariner. But because I was the one assembling the watch and choosing the parts, I made sure there are a plethora of intentional differences so that this watch suits my needs. And the first thing I wanted to start off with is the dial. So one thing that I really, really loved about the Submariner is the glossy and lacquer dial. Unfortunately, Namoki Mods doesn't carry their own Submariner style lacquer dial, so I actually opted for an AliExpress Seiko Pro Specs dial that is very similar to that of the Submariners, and it has C3 lume, and I also got Mercedes hands from Namoki Mods with BGW9 lume. So at night when there's no light and I don't want to turn my phone on to get blinded by my phone's blue light just to check the time. I actually wear this watch to sleep, and the lume lasts quite a while, and because the hands and the dial's lume colors are different, it actually allows for some contrast for easy legibility. So if you're watching this video, you might be interested in checking out Namoki mods and their parts, and possibly even taking some inspiration from this build. So I will leave a link in the description to Namoki mod's website, and I'll also link all the parts to build this watch in the description down below. They are affiliate links, so you are helping out the channel if you purchase from those links. And in fact, if you use TimeTicker 5 or TimeTicker 10 at checkout, you can get up to 10% off of the parts. As mentioned before, I got a red AR double dome sapphire crystal on this watch, and there are a few reasons for that. So first of all, I really like the distortion that double dome sapphire crystals create, and I think it just adds a little bit of pizzazz that the Rolex Submariner's flat sapphire crystal doesn't have. Obviously that adds thickness, and I will get to that in just a little bit. But also I like the colored red AR coating, because although clear AR coating is probably best for the mass markets because not everybody likes the color red, not everybody likes red AR. The beauty of creating your own watch is that you get to pick everything down to the color of the AR coating. And again, it just reminds me that this is my own watch, that there's a little flair of myself in the watch. I also don't have a Cyclops on this crystal. I don't believe Namoki offers a crystal with a Cyclops. I could be wrong, but I technically could have opted for an AliExpress crystal with a Cyclops, but I decided not to do that because my eyes are not the best, but they're also not the worst. So I can definitely tell what day it is by looking at it from a glance without a Cyclops. And personally, I just don't like the way Cyclops look. I think they look kind of ugly, but I am an avid date user, so I still really appreciate a date function. And I think that without this Cyclops, it maintains a semblance of symmetry that the Rolex Date Submariner does not have, while also getting the benefits of having a date window. And although I've been constantly comparing this watch to a Submariner, I think that the fact that it doesn't have a Cyclops but it has a date function, it kind of reminds me of the Rolex Sea Dweller ST4K, even though it has a matte dial. It has a dial with a date aperture without a Cyclops, and I personally really like this look. One other reason that this watch is better suited to me than the Rolex Submariner in some regards is the female end links. So my wrist is 6.5 inches. It's not the smallest wrist size I've heard of, not the biggest wrist size, but I've noticed that 40 millimeters for me is pushing it. So I knew that this watch was going to wear large, so I decided to go for female end links because they tend to conform better to my wrist, and it means that this watch wears a lot better than it would have with male end links. If you are enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notifications bell to get notified on the latest videos on this channel, and drop a comment in the comment section down below because I'm very diligent in responding to those. And if you are a fan of this channel, I would also appreciate it if you checked out the TimeTicker team membership, because there you get priority responses to your comments, and you also get early access to awesome videos like this and tons of other perks. No bracelet, no product is perfect, so I have to outline some of my gripes with this bracelet. And the first one being the width of this bracelet. It is 22 millimeters, which is 2 millimeters bigger than the Rolex Submariner's bracelet. And I don't know exactly why they made it 22 millimeters, because I think 20 millimeters is a better size for most people's wrists, and it just makes it unnecessarily wide and chunky for this watch. And the next thing I have to talk about is this pressed clasp. At this price point, they should be offering a milled clasp with at least 5 points of micro adjust, and some of their AliExpress competitors are offering on-the-fly adjust. So I really think that Namoki needs to up their bracelet game on this particular bracelet. So the case on this watch is very reminiscent of the Rolex Submariners because it has vertical brushing on the top of the lugs and the flanks are fully polished. And unlike the Rolex Submariner, this actually has drilled lugs, which make it great for swapping out the bracelet onto a native strap. But unfortunately, as I sort of mentioned in the bracelet aspect of this watch, the lug width on this case is 22 millimeters, meaning that it's just a little bit more unnecessarily difficult to find straps for this watch because I have tons of straps that are 20 millimeters in lug width, but only a few that are 22 millimeters in lug width. So this Caseback is their slim Caseback. It is a sterile Caseback because I've seen enough NH35, NH36 movements in my lifetime. So I tried to reduce the thickness using this Caseback, and I also opted for a fully brushed Seiko crown. And unlike the Rolex Submariner, I went for a fully loomed chapter ring, which means that at night you can actually tell the time down to the minute. Even though Rolex themselves don't have any fancy ornate finishing on the Rolex Submariner's case, I gotta wish that Namoki added a bit of englage on the flanks of the watch. It would just add a nice touch to the case. I know that might be asking a little bit much of them, especially considering that they're supposed to be homaging the Submariner. This watch case is substantially thicker than Rolex's own case that equates to 12 millimeters with the case crystal and case backing. But one thing I do have to note though is that if you want a thinner watch case, you can actually opt for a thinner crystal with a thinner bezel and a thin case back, which cuts the thickness down to 12 millimeters overall. And the next thing I want to touch upon is the lug width. So because the lug width is 22 millimeters, it actually pushes out the lugs, making it look kind of weird in my opinion, especially when you compare it to the Rolex Submariner. And the last thing I want to mention is the crown. So although the crown is great to set the time because it's big, it's chunky, and it's grippy, the problem is that it is fully brushed, so it stands out from the rest of the case, kind of like a sore thumb. So in the future, I might just switch to a fully polished crown with the same sort of styling. This watch is as versatile as the Submariner, almost as versatile, because the way it looks is so similar. So if you are virtually at any sort of event outside of very, very formal events, this watch will fit the occasion. And I'll caveat that with this. This watch is 15 millimeters thick. So this watch isn't just gonna slide over a cuff. Your cuff is probably gonna get caught when you slide it down your wrist. So I would recommend making it slimmer if you do decide to build something similar to this. And also in terms of its ability to be a go anywhere, do anything type watch, I would also recommend going to your local watchmaker and getting this professionally pressure tested or getting your own pressure tester. So now let's answer the burning question. Should you build something? Should you buy something like this? And my answer is no, actually. I don't think you should build something just like this watch unless you love every single aspect of the watch I have built. Because as I've mentioned before, time and time again, the beauty of building your own watch is that you have the ability to customize everything. Every little feature is catered to your niche interests. So chances are you aren't going to love this watch from top to bottom. So what I'd recommend doing is, as I mentioned before, going onto Namoki's website and browsing through the different products they have. And if you like this watch, then you could take inspiration from the watch and use some of the parts, but then also kind of make it your own watch. That's the beauty of this whole hobby. So that's my advice to you. And also, if you don't like the way that Submariners look, if you're not a big fan of divers, I'd also recommend checking out my other builds. I'll have them linked somewhere over here at the end of the video. One of my other builds that I'm proud of is this Grand Seiko-esque build. I built it purely off AliExpress. Still recommend building the majority of your watch from Namoki parts because there are a few issues I ran into there. But aside from that, There are tons of other examples of me building watches that I think you might be interested in. And I want to thank Dean Woods for being the first and currently only Time Ticker team member. I really appreciate it, Dean. Thank you as always. And then the last thing I want to mention is I hope that this channel patinas like your favorite watch. I will see you on another episode on the Time Ticker.